Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. First, the good news from our friends across the pond, as they say, a smashing victory for labor. Now, this was only possible, not only after the calamitous rule of the Conservative Party, the Tories, for some 14 years, and making hash out of their economy and Brexit and running the most incompetent campaign one could imagine. But, and I think this is the lesson for the rest of us, Labor's victory was only possible once it became a plausible center-left party. Corbynism is dead. That was never going to carry the day. But in remaking the Labor Party as a responsible center-left party, they gave a raft to the voters that they could hop onto. And that's an important lesson for Democrats here. It's an important lesson for, I think, elections around the world, that if you're going to combat the far left and the far right, you better have something closer to the center that is much more appealing. Now, as my producer, a Brit, just reminded me, it is troubling that you see Neil Farage's party, the far right Reform Party, get as many seats as they did. And there were some independents who ran in various districts who did quite well, and those people were radically on the right. So it's not completely positive, but overall, it's a sunny picture, and it's a picture of democracy functioning as it should. The voters turned out. There was no complaint. The losers conceded. And today, they have a new prime minister. No waiting period, no transition. They are on with the next page in their history. So bravo for the Brits. Now, back to the United States. I want to see if we can separate things that are distinct. Let me give it a try. You can believe that the press is overwrought, irresponsible, never covered Trump and his emotional mental problems as they should, is inflating gross rumor and speculation, and yet still believe it may be time for Biden to go. Simply conceding that the press has behaved poorly is not a defense of Biden. It is simply a condemnation of the press. So let's see if we can keep doing this. Arguing that Biden should be given a period of time to show that he is up for the job is not the same as denial and saying everything was fine, it was just a bad night. No, asking for a period of time during which Biden can demonstrate he's either fit or not fit is the rational, reasonable way that parties make momentous decisions. After all, there are a lot of factors to consider here. It's not simply, oh, Biden's old, we don't like him, could we try something new? Millions of people voted for him. You have to calculate the losses and the gains in switching to the non-incumbent, even though Kamala Harris is vice president. You have to consider in those critical swing states, is it more likely that those 50,000 people, say, in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, who are going to determine the fate of our democracy, is it more likely they would vote for an aging Biden or Kamala Harris? We really don't have perfect information, but at some point, we have enough information. Let's take another one of these. These two things are not the same. It is perfectly reasonable to say the New York Times call for Biden to instantaneously step down without ever having made such a call for Biden and without regard for any of those factors I just laid out is absurd and arrogant and one of the reasons it loses credibility. And yet at the same time think that after this period of reflection, after this period of trial and error, that Biden might have to finally step aside. It's also not fair or appropriate to say, rotten debate, rotten staff. The staff could have done everything right. After all, they set up the debate very early in the calendar to give time for something like this to play out. But they can only prepare so much. They can only do what they can. And then ultimately, the candidate and the candidate's family is responsible for what they do. The press seems to think they were lied to. I don't think they were lied to. The staff told them exactly what was going on, which is, yeah, he's slowed down, but he's a functioning president. Look at the results. He has been governing. So I think this woe is me, the staff is to blame, the staff has lied, is a bunch of nonsense. Next comparison. It is very possible that someone can be a very good decision maker, can hire really good people, can make tough calls, can show great empathy, can perform at a very high level the job of president. And it is also possible that that very same person has lost the ability to instill confidence through rhetoric, through energy, and through a public impression. You can say that the latter set of things are superficial, and they are. That's why the press is obsessed with it. You can say, well, what else do we have to go on? I don't think that's right. I think you can look at the results and say, of course Biden is functioning. The results are the results. But, and here's the big dilemma. If he cannot convince people that he is capable of running a strong campaign, if he cannot get the focus back to where it should be, which is Trump's mental and emotional defects, his plan for turning this country into a dictatorship, and the Supreme Court that has just turned the Constitution inside out, he cannot be the prime candidate. He cannot be at the top of the ticket. So there are a lot of things going on. And before people jump from A to B to C, I think it behooves everyone to think carefully that multiple things can be true and multiple things are going on all at once. For those of you who think that Biden cannot pull it together, and I understand, he really hasn't made a lot of appearances. He's going to do a interview with George Stephanopoulos tonight, and it's only going to be 15 minutes. And so you may be wondering, where is he? Why hasn't he been around? Shouldn't he be out there? And you may conclude, once again, bad staff. Well, it may be evidence that he can't do that. And if that is the case, if it is the case that he can't get out there to do the things he needs to instill confidence, then it's going to be time to decide. And Biden ultimately is going to have to make that decision himself. That's just reality. No one can push him out. The notion that the New York Times saying it makes it so is a little bit preposterous. Actually, it's a lot preposterous. But those people who have influence with him, who he respects, who have been with him over the years, and I do not mean staff that works for him, but I mean people who he considers to be his peers, people he has served in Congress with, in the Senate with, people from Delaware, and ultimately his family. Those are the people who will exercise influence. Now, in this case, I absolutely believe that the family will never tell him, never level with him, even if they think this is heading towards a collision. They have too much faith in him. They have too much respect for him. They cannot bring themselves to deliver this news. And moreover, they don't believe it because they have seen him operate. They know what he can do. So the very people who have been watching him the closest know he is still capable of doing the nuts and bolts of the job. No, the message is going to have to come from this other group of people who he respects, who he sees as peers. How long does this process take? I don't know. It could happen very quickly. If the George Stephanopoulos interview this evening goes, taping this on Friday, goes poorly, the process could move ahead much more quickly. If he does pretty well, and he does one or two other events, but it becomes evident he can't get weaned off the teleprompter, and it becomes evident that he simply has not turned the polls around and they continue to die, then it could be a week. It could be 2 weeks. I understand people's sense of urgency. And fortunately, the primary comes, rather the convention, which counts the votes from the primary, doesn't come until August. So there is time. Now, the notion that they're going to have an open primary, or people can spin the dial and get their favorite white governor from the middle of the country, whoever that might be, that's crazy. He has a vice president. The Democratic Party is not going to boot out and kick to the curb the only female African-American vice president we have had. And moreover, they shouldn't. After all, as I write today in the Washington Post, she is most capable in the areas that should be front and center in this campaign. She has been a marvelous spokesperson for the administration when it comes to jobs. She has been phenomenal in attacking the lawless Supreme Court and their corruption, both financial and intellectual. And there is no one better at slamming and skewering Donald Trump. She was a prosecutor, and that's what this election is really about, prosecuting the case against Donald Trump, keep him out of office. So not only will Democrats not boot her out if they decide to make a change, but they shouldn't. And it will be, I think, a relatively quick process if they do so, that the party will rally to her. And in some sense, this week or so that has been venting and angst-ridden and filled with anxiety, I think has allowed many, not all, but many smart people within the Democratic ranks. I'm talking about elected officials. I'm talking about the delegates. I'm talking about donors and operatives to come to the conclusion that the choice here is Biden or Harris. It's not Biden and your mystery, fabulous, imaginary candidate. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a lot of anxiety, a lot of upset, a lot of uncertainty. And that is something I think we sometimes try to remove by pontification and prognostication. But sometimes you have to kind of hold your breath, take a breath, and realize that a process is playing out. And that the Democratic Party as a whole is absolutely devoted to preserving our democracy, is absolutely devoted to the idea that this is the most important election because if Trump gets in, the country is frankly done for. And so I think you have to have some confidence in those people who have shown themselves to be absolute heroic warriors for democracy and who have in fact helped implement and help pass the Biden agenda. They know what's at stake. And I think the best we can do at this point is reaffirm again and again that it matters not at all who is at top of the Democratic ticket. If Biden were dead, I would still vote for him. Because what you're voting for is a party, is a philosophy, is an entire branch of government, thousands of people who will carry out either a program to reinforce, bolster democracy and do the people's business, or turn this country into a living hell. So that's where we are. What does that mean for you? And those of you who have been wondering, what can I do? You keep doing exactly what you've been doing. You keep making the case to friends and family that Donald Trump is completely unfit. You keep volunteering for causes and campaigns that will advance the cause of democracy. You keep giving your time and your money to organizations that promote democracy, whether it's the Democracy docket from our friend Mark Elias, whether it is Protect Democracy with our friend Ian Bassett, whether it is the ACLU, whether it is the NAACP, whether it is Planned Parenthood. There are many groups that need your help. They need to get the message out because they are all, regardless of who is at the top of the ticket, they are all going to be fighting to save democracy. Now, I do want to hear your views, particularly now. I want to hear what you think. Do you really think Biden can pull it out? Do you think we're past the point of no return? And do you still have confidence that the American people will choose democracy over dictatorship. Let me know what your thoughts are. Write in, write comments, write questions. I want to hear from all of you. So there we have it. If you like this program and you like our other programs, please tell your friends. They can listen and follow at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcast. Just click right there. Bye-bye.